And we get into it with the Donovan Live postgame show on a Wednesday night. I'm Dave DeNatale along with Jim Donovan. Good to see everyone. Happy June 19th.
Right.
And Jimmy, I thought you put together a terrific kind of remembrance of 3 years ago on this day. The greatest day in sports history in the city of Cleveland in most of our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful as we remember the Cavaliers and winning the NBA championship.
And I really mean this. And if you're ever at a party and the party's kind of a dud, okay, and it's a Cleveland party, to pick it up, and I have done this, which tells you I've been at a lot of bad parties, all right? But on the more important point, I have done this where I've said, hey, where were you the night that the Cavaliers won the title? Mm-hmm. And people immediately perk up. And I have to tell you, a number of people get so emotional that they can't finish sentences because it was that emotional of a night for everybody and what they felt. And it was an amazing night. It was an amazing day.
Yes.
Okay, and I recapped the day for you. It was Father's Day, as we said in the piece. And you had to wait for the game.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was an earlier start than normal because it was a Sunday night. So it was an 8 o'clock tip. When I was driving down here, because I was here and Super Dave Chudowski was out in Oakland,
California,
okay? But when I was driving down here, the Indians were losing that afternoon to the White Sox.
That's
they
right.
Came back and they tied the game on an error by the White Sox and then won it on a Jose Ramirez hit.
And keep in mind what year this is. This is 2016.
Okay, now more to come, right?
Yeah.
And I'm driving along and I go, geez, I wonder if that's you're always looking for signs.
For signs,
is that a sign? And I came down here and it's now 4:30, 5 o'clock. And downtown is starting to just fill.
Yes.
And you were downtown.
I was too.
Yeah, you were
I was across the Galleria. I was hosting
K&R Studios.
K&R's pregame show. You know, we didn't have the Cavs rights, but we had the rights to air the NBA Finals on ESPN Radio. Right. So we did like a 2-hour pregame show, and we had a couple of our guys. I think Aaron Goldhammer and Emmett Golden and Tony Rizzo were all out in California covering it. And so it was myself, Greg Brinda, and Michael Regai doing the pregame till I think we went 5 to 7, and then took it up to the start of ESPN's pregame. And I'm with you. I can remember just parking my car and walking out at like 4:30 or whatever.
And people were coming
people
downtown.
Because
everybody. It wasn't the Indians crowd.
No,
it was people coming, downtown, and they were filling the bars, and then they were, if they were fortunate enough to get inside the queue. Mm-hmm. Okay, then that filled up, and then that outside area. And one of the other reasons we did the piece tonight and did it the way we did it was because Channel 3 had such great vantage points because there was a lot of planning that went into that. We were in the right spots, anticipating if they win, we want to be in the right spots. And we were, and I mean, some of the crowd shots are just, they take your breath away. I mean, because it was so real. And it was just an amazing night that spilled into an amazing week.
Yeah.
I mean, it just overlapped itself.
It was like, God, okay, what do we do? We won a championship. How does this all happen? When the game was going back and forth, and it was a tight game, it felt like most of the night, was there ever a point when you were like, I don't know about this, or there was a point when you said, boy, I think we can do this?
Yeah, well, there was one point in the second half, and kind of deep into the second half, where the Cavs went out and took like an 8-point lead.
Yes.
And Golden State then, as Golden State was wont to do, started hitting those threes again, and that 8-point lead was gone. And that's when I went, you're on the brink. But then there was that point that is amazing, and it almost felt like an hour and a half when the game was tied.
Yes.
89-89.
Yep.
I mean, it was just 89-89, and then the block, and then the three. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was just like, this is real. This is really happening. And you saw I thought the Cavs were confident all night long.
Yes.
I really did. I thought that confidence just grew from a dismal point when they lost here and they went down 3-1, but then got the news when they got out to Oakland for Game 5 that Draymond Green was suspended. And it really shifted everything.
Yes.
That shifted everything.
And I think Steph Curry having his little temper tantrum in Game 6
with the mouthpiece,
I remember sitting there thinking, man, if they're on nerve like this, you know, they're gonna. I mean, the pressure's going to be on them as much as it is on the Cavs to win this thing. What I always do appreciate, I mean, the Cavs did put together, for better or worse, they put together a big three, and it was LeBron, and it was Kyrie, and it was Kevin Love, and each of them had a moment during that and that last 2 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
The block, the shot, and then, as they say, the stop. And Love, who probably a year earlier wouldn't have been on the floor. David Blatt would have taken him out of the game because of his defensive liabilities. But having to draw Steph Curry on a switch, and instead of just like backing off, he knew he couldn't back off because you can't give Steph Curry room, and he did. He just kind of stayed with him. I mean, as best he could. I mean, a guy that not known at all for his defense, he played good defense there in that stretch.
Yeah, it was an amazing night, and it was an amazing Monday after that when they finally came home.
How late were you here?
We stayed on the air, I think, until I think we were on the air till like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then we signed off, and then the morning show came in, and they took over. But then I immediately came back in the late morning because, remember, we didn't know when they were coming home.
Yes, yeah.
And then they took that detour and went to Las Vegas. And so that pushed everything back. So I remember I was back here first of all, I couldn't sleep when I went home because it was just so wild that they won it. And so I came back into work, and we waited for them to come home, and now we were out at the airport. And we had reporters out there, and Tiffany Tarpley was one of them, and she did an amazing job out there. And now there's 20,000 people out at the airport.
The airport, yes.
And it's hot.
Yes.
It was a hot day. And they arrived, and then there's a third chapter to it. Now there's 1,000 or 1,500 people lining that street in Akron.
Right.
Outside
LeBron's place.
Outside LeBron's place. So we went off the air once they brought the trophy off the plane. We signed off. But now he's in a big van, and he goes home, and I'll be a son of a gun. He pulls out a microphone, stands on the step, the ledge of the van, and he starts speaking to the crowd outside his house. I mean, it was just amazing.
It was amazing.
There were so many parts to it, and of course, then the parade a couple of days later. So we were on the air till 2 in the morning, and then we went. The morning show picked it up right away, and then we were on the air pretty much from noon till almost 4 o'clock, and then of course we went back to regular news at that point.
Yeah, and then you have like one day, then you figure, okay, when's the parade? And then you have to do all the parade prep, and the parade was passing, of course, right by the Galleria where I was.
Right.
So we had one crew set up at the Galleria. We have one crew set up at the mall, and trying to figure out where the best spots are, and then trying to figure out how many. I still love this. Trying to figure out how many people were actually downtown for the parade, and word had filtered out, and thanks to Anthony Lima over at 92.3 The Fan for helping to fan the flame of it, that there was 1.3 million people. I mean, there were so many people.
I know, it was just amazing. It really was. I made a fatal mistake, and I went home after the 11 o'clock news the night before the parade. And I'm pulling out, and Dino, people are literally with sleeping bags.
Yes.
Out on
lawn chairs.
Out on Lakeside Avenue, getting a spot in lawn chairs. You're right. And all the hotels were booked. They just were booked that people came down. And I drove home and said, well, I'll get up early tomorrow morning and get down. And I got up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I think I was in the car at 7. And we went on the air at 10. Okay? We were going to go on the air.
What time did you get in?
Here?
Yeah.
Well, that's the part of the story. So I'm driving down, and I'm doing okay, and I get to the airport of 70, that airport exit, 150th off of 71, and suddenly stopped traffic, and the clock is going and going. And finally, I get off at West 25th, just trying to weave my way.
Yes.
But again, that's mobbed.
Yes.
Because people are going over by the Detroit Superior Bridge, whatever the bridge is over there by Progressive Field.
Lorraine Carnegie Bridge.
There you go, the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. And now I weave my way back over onto West 25th to try and find, I'm trying to find a lot. And plus, I'm going to miss getting on the air. Finally, I pull up to I get as far as the First Energy Stadium, where the public would park.
Yeah.
You know, in one of the lots there, and I give a kid $50 to park my car. Can I park here? And the kid goes, well, I don't know. What's it worth? And I give him 50 bucks. Get out of the car and run over to the hotel where we did that. We did it at the Hilton, and just got there. Well, good morning.
Hi, everybody.
It was, but when the Browns win the Super Bowl, I am not going home.
Yeah, we will be. Yeah,
here.
we will be prepared.
Yeah, I'm going to stay here.
I took. I parked at the West 117th Rapid Station. I got there at like 5 in the morning.
Oh, wow. You see, you're a better man than I am, Gunga.
Because I knew, because the line, I got on a train, the line went all the way down to Madison to get onto the train to get downtown. So I got, and then I walked to the Galleria because I had to get out, right after the parade, I had to leave. I was getting an award from the Ohio High School Athletic Association. I had to go to Fair. You remember these days because you just remember you had to do things, and I had to get to Fairview or Fairlawn, not Fairview Park, Fairlawn at 6. And so, like, I left downtown like at 4:30 trying to get out of here, and it's amazing. We bring all this up because number one, it's still a great memory. It's still a great moment. It's you know, watching the piece when you kind of was getting put together last night. You had chills because it's a great moment. But this all happens as the Cavaliers prepare for a very significant draft tomorrow night as they continue this new phase, this new era of rebuilding.
Yeah, and you know, they sit in the number 5 spot, and it seems like it could be a very fluid draft even before them, even before they pick. And of course, everything kind of got thrown into a tither when Anthony Davis was traded over the weekend to the Lakers from the Pelicans. And now the Lakers are out of that number 4 slot, and the Pelicans have 1, which we know will be Zion Williamson, and they have 2. Okay, and the Knicks have 3, and we know what Memphis is going to do at 2. They're going to go with Ja Morant, especially after they traded Michael Conley today out to Utah. So the Cavs sit at 5. And there may be some business for them. I mean, maybe they get out of the 5, or maybe they add to the pick. Suddenly, Kevin Love's name is coming up. You know, a name that you just brought up for playing defense in that 7th game. You know, that he might be somebody that, you know, a team like New Orleans may say, well, Zion Williamson's going to need a more veteran player to come in and help him along. David Griffin always stood up for Kevin Love. David Griffin's running the show with the Pelicans right now. Could he deal the 4 pick, and the Cavs end up with a 4-5 combo? And if you make the right picks, that could get you back in, you know, on the road to recovery a lot quicker. You know, Dino, I have no gauge on what they're going to do. I mean, I know they're talking about the kid from Vanderbilt. They're talking about DeAndre Hopkins from, you know, DeAndre Hunter from Virginia. DeAndre Hopkins is a great wide receiver. You know, they're talking about the kid from Texas Tech. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah,
you know?
because they have 2 first-rounders. I mean, there's been talk that, well, they could trade down with Atlanta because Atlanta's got a couple of first-rounders.
Atlanta's got 8 and 10, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's
the Celtics have a bunch of first-round picks, and the Celtics are a mess now. You know, here was a team that, you know, had all of these picks that they were using to make the big score, and the big score was going to be that they would get Anthony Davis. Yeah. And Kyrie Irving would re-sign, and Al Horford will stay
with Hayward, and they were going to have and Brown and Tatum, and they were going to have something.
Right, and they backed out of the New Orleans talks for Anthony Davis when New Orleans was demanding that Tatum be a part of the deal. They didn't want to give him up, but now all of a sudden they don't get Davis. Irving's leaving.
Yes.
Al Horford's leaving. I mean, they're a mess. Yeah. You know, so it could be a very fluid, you know, draft coming up. But there was news today, and that was that the Knicks had a tryout or a workout for the kid from Vanderbilt. Okay, Garland, you know. Yeah. Okay, now he only played 5 games last year because he hurt his knee, and he hurt his knee against Kent State.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right around Thanksgiving, a game that Kent State ended up winning. And Vanderbilt went on and did not win a game in the SEC that year, and it cost the coach his job. So the Knicks worked him on. A lot of people said, well, would they go for him at number 3? They worked him out just to see him, but they're definitely locked in on the kid from Duke, the guard from Duke, Barrett. Yeah. So they're going to pick him, and some people are wondering, okay, where does this kid the kid from Vanderbilt go. Some people are worried about, well, he only played 5 games.
Right.
And, you wonder what's going to happen.
It's legit, but I remember Kyrie Irving didn't play
He only
that
played
many.
like 11
right,
games.
Right,
didn't he?
Kyrie Irving didn't play that many college games either.
Would he have a toe injury?
Yeah. And it was. I realized it wasn't as serious of an injury, but it restricted his time in the NCAA, quite a bit. And so there was that concern that, while his ceiling was here, he didn't have enough of a college resume, and that Derek Williams was the safer pick.
Right.
So that might be something the Cavaliers are weighing. And here's the other thing, Jimmy, is they're doing this. We've basically gotten weekly updates, or every 2 weeks or so we've gotten updates on the recovery of owner Dan Gilbert.
Yes.
We don't, and again, we hope that Dan is progressing well from the stroke that he suffered. But he's not going to be necessarily in the room. I mean, to work with Kobe Altman. This is Kobe Altman. He's going to have to do a lot of this without the owner next to him, and this is. I find that an interesting part of all this too. You don't have, whereas in the past Gilbert, he was a major influence on everything.
Influence, right. I mean, there are reports that there were times that they were heading down the path to a certain player in the draft, and Gilbert would come in to the office and say, "Nope, we're going to go with this." Mm-hmm. Okay, so that seems to be out of play tomorrow night. So, you could look at it and say the basketball people are going to make a very, very important basketball decision or decisions for the Cavaliers and rest well tonight with basketball people making the decisions. You could use the example that when a football guy finally made the decisions for the Cleveland Browns, bang.
Yeah.
You have Denzel Ward, you have Baker Mayfield, you have Nick Chubb, you have Austin Corbett, and you have 7 wins.
Yeah, right.
And, you can look at it that way.
Yeah.
I think you can definitely look at it that way and not be cold to what's going on with Dan Gilbert's situation. But the basketball people are definitely in charge of this thing tomorrow.
Yeah. Last two thoughts to close out on. We have all this talk about the Cavaliers and remembering winning a championship, and there's always and the Indians, of course, came so close a few months later, but there's just always that talk now. It's like people say, will say to you, boy, can you imagine if the Browns, win the Super Bowl, what that would be like? Yeah. And, that's, you have to be, I mean, now it's to the point, and they haven't even gotten to the playoffs yet, but that's going to start to be a possible tangible thing with this football team as they go forward, because the pieces are now in place and they continue to improve.
Yeah, dramatically. They are way ahead of the plan, because remember, the plan was that Baker Mayfield would just be starting his first game in the NFL this year. Mm-hmm. Okay, but he played like 13 games last year, and he played well, and all the pieces are in place. Yeah. When you're going into training camp, and they're going into training camp in a few weeks, when you're going into training camp, and your big concern is who's your kicker going to be, you're a pretty good football team.
You're in good shape.
You're in pretty good shape. Now, that's a big decision, okay? I mean, they lost 3 games because they didn't have a good kicker or a steady kicker last year. But, remember what they were going in and the decisions that they would typically have to make during these 20 years of what they were going to do. They would go right down to the week of the first game, and they would have guys from other teams join them on a Tuesday or a Wednesday of the opening game, Sammy Coates.
That's right.
Okay, and they would be starting in the opening game of the season. It was absurd what was going on. That's no way to do business. They're in good shape. Yeah. They really are. They're very real.
Yeah.
Now we'll see how real.
Right. We'll see when the proof will be in the pudding when we take the field. We see them on the field, but. But sure, to go from the kind of conversations you and I first had, this show is about 2 years old now, and we've been doing it regularly, and to go from the conversations that we would have in early 2017 or this time 2017 to where we are now is pretty amazing.
We did a show about you asking me, are you going to the winless, the 0-16 parade?
Yes.
And I would say, no, I'm not going to do that. No. Now, we could be,
We could be talking about a
Talking
different kind
about
of
a
parade.
different kind of parade.
Yeah, much different kind of parade. Okay, one thing to say a thank you, by the way, to the Press Club of Cleveland. We haven't had a show since we received, I didn't bring up the award with us, but for the second year in a row, we were honored as one of the top podcasts in the state of Ohio.
Thank you very much.
Number-
Do we get
yeah,
rings
sixth
for
place.
that or anything?
No, we get
When am I gonna
certificates.
get
I want a
ring?
ring. I want a ring. I know. I want a ring. But thank you to the Press Club of Cleveland. We're still gunning for number one. You know, we're the Susan Lucci of podcasts.
And tired of it.
You know, tired of it. We're going for number one. And last thought was just thinking about that championship night in 2016. The most memorable part of it for me was calling the person who I had gone to more Cavs games with than anybody else, who I had spent more time talking sports with than anyone else, was my dad, and calling him and saying, can you believe this? You know, all those times we used to trek out in the wintertime across Route 303 to go over to the Coliseum, and now, I mean, the Cavs were his favorite team, and I loved basketball through my dad. Now all of a sudden we got to win a championship, and to see it, and the fact that I could call my dad and say, this is amazing, it was an unbelievable feeling. A couple days before Father's Day last week, my dad passed away. Frank DeNatale, a.k.a. Buzz. He was 77 years old. My thanks go out to my Channel 3 family and my friends and family for all of their love and support. The message or the motto is just, if you have your dad, give him a call. Yeah. He will appreciate it. That means you too, Megan Donovan. Call Dad.
Yeah.
Call Dad. Let Dad know. But my love out to my dad and my family.
I have cash, Megan.
Yes,
so you'll be
that's
fine.
right.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back with you tomorrow night during the NBA draft. We'll be able to have a breakdown of what the Cavs do tomorrow night. So we'll be back with you later time tomorrow after the NBA draft gets rolling and we have an idea what the Cavs are going to do. For Jimmy, I'm Dino. Thanks for watching the Donovan Live postgame show on WKYC's Facebook Live.
All right. Very good, Dino. Very nice.